With $4, how many items of clothing do you think you can buy? 1, 3, or even a dozen if you know how to bargain and apply discount codes? On e-commerce platforms, the prices of fashion items are increasingly lower, to the point where many consumers feel they are losing out if they don't buy. The question is, why can clothes be so cheap? What lies behind those irrationally low-priced items? The answer, in fact, appeared 10 years ago in the documentary The True Cost, directed by Andrew Morgan. The film leads viewers into the dark side of the modern fashion industry, where the real price is no longer just the number printed on the tag. From impoverished garment factories in Asia, pesticide-laden cotton fields, to rivers dyed with chemicals or giant clothing landfills, all are just small pieces of a dark reality, where fleeting glamour is traded for long-term consequences. When fashion shifts from a durable good to a disposable item, what is the actual price we must pay? Let's join Movi buffs to explore how the fashion industry operates to find the answer. For a long time, the outfits we wear have become one of the ways we express our personality to the outside world. The love for beauty and creativity has become the driving force for the development of the garment industry. Fashion systems were gradually formed, where designers unveiled collections for spring, summer, autumn, and winter on the runways. But by the time The True Cost was released, and continuing to this day, this industry has changed at a dizzying pace. In the 1960s, 95% of the clothes Americans wore were produced domestically. But by the 2010s, that figure was only 3%. Most products are manufactured in developing countries such as Bangladesh, India, Cambodia, and China. As the volume of outsourced production increased, the prices of items continued to fall. That trend set the stage for an entirely new model. Brands like H&M, Zara, Forever 21, and Uniqlo dominate the consumer market with incredibly attractive prices. Instead of 2 collections for 2 seasons a year, fast fashion brands can launch new products every week to ensure they can sell as many products as possible. Fashion has become an industry where profit is put first, but as the price of an item decreases, it means the production method must change. Roger Lee is running a garment business in China that produces 1/6 of the shirts sold in the US. He said that although product prices are decreasing, the cost of making them is increasing. So, who is bearing the difference? It is the cheap labor in garment factories in developing countries. To achieve cheap prices for consumers, the production of garments is pushed to countries with underdeveloped economies, where the minimum wage is kept extremely low. There, the decision-making power lies in the hands of those at the top of the value chain. They can choose where their products are manufactured at the price that yields the highest profit. When a factory says they cannot produce at such a cheap price, the brand can immediately find another factory, because they have countless choices. Conversely, factory owners have no other choice. They accept being squeezed on price, because only then can the factories stay in operation. Brands pressure the owners, and the owners pressure their workers. To achieve the prices the brands desire, many factories resort to cutting costs and eliminating safety measures. And then labor accidents appeared. On April 24, 2013, the 8-story Rana Plaza building in a sub-district near Dhaka, Bangladesh, collapsed. There were thousands of garment workers inside. It was even more outrageous when workers had discovered cracks in the walls and reported them to management, but they were ignored and forced back to work. The consequence was more than 1,000 deaths and about 2,500 injuries. And that was just one of many tragic disasters that have occurred in the fashion industry. Yet a year after the Rana Plaza disaster, the fashion industry was still recorded as the most profitable industry of all time. An industry that brings in such huge profits but cannot properly support its workers or ensure their safety. One would think this is a condemnable truth that everyone must recognize. But director Andrew Morgan pointed out a reality that many Americans don't really care about these issues. When Andrew asked about sweatshops, factories that exploit labor with extremely low wages, long hours, and no benefits or labor protection, many Americans appeared indifferent and argued that it was the workers' choice. The workers choose to work in those factories themselves, and they're just doing their jobs. What's so dangerous about sewing clothes? It's not like mining coal or natural gas. Americans believe that the jobs they grant to people in developing countries are the least dangerous compared to other options. But is the reality what they think? In the capital Dhaka, Bangladesh, there are nearly 4 million workers in nearly 5,000 garment factories. 85% of them are women. With a minimum wage of less than $3 a day, it's not even half the minimum wage for 1 hour of work in the US. Companies in this city have the lowest wages in the world. According to the story of Shima, a garment worker in Dhaka, she came to work in the city at the age of 12, and her first monthly salary was only $10. Shima tried to improve the working environment. She founded a union at her workplace and submitted a list of demands to management. A conflict broke out between the workers and management. Eventually, management locked the doors and called 30 to 40 staff to rush in and beat the female workers. They used chairs, sticks, scales, and even scissors to attack Shima and her colleagues. The girls were beaten, struck in the stomach and chest, and had their heads slammed against the wall. And in the end, there was no improvement in the working environment. Cramped workshops in Dhaka are only the final stage in creating a fashion item. To get a broader view, director Andrew began to trace back to the first stages, where the cotton fibers are grown. At the other end of the supply chain, on the white cotton fields in India, farmers are also being squeezed by a modern agricultural system where power lies entirely in the hands of chemical and seed technology corporations. Since the 1950s, after the war ended, factories that once produced chemical weapons were diverted to producing fertilizers, especially nitrogen fertilizers. Many factories were brought to third world countries, including India. However, traditional Indian plant varieties were not suitable for this new fertilizer. To adapt, a new system was established. A genetically modified cotton variety called BT cotton was born. This new variety was promoted as helping the cotton plant self-secrete toxins to resist pests, so no pesticides were needed, but the reality was different from the advertisements. After a while, pests developed resistance to the toxin in BT cotton plants, and so farmers still had to spray more pesticides to control them. Moreover, BT seeds monopolized by the Monsanto Corporation cannot be reused after each crop, forcing farmers to constantly buy new ones at high prices. Indian farmers have since fallen into deep debt because they have to buy expensive seeds, plus the cost of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Losing money is one thing, but miserable people also suffer serious health damage due to long-term exposure to chemicals. Punjab, the state that grows the most cotton in India, quickly became the region with the highest pesticide use in the country. The consequence is that many people in the region suffer from genetic diseases, cancer, and mental illnesses. Every village has 70 to 80 children with birth defects, both physical deformities and intellectual disabilities. The companies producing the pesticides and chemical fertilizers deny all responsibility for the negative impacts their products cause to the people of Punjab. Farmers here are completely unable to pay for treatment, so they can only watch their children slowly die from disease. Dr. Vandana Shiva, an Indian environmental activist, shared in the film, the company that produces the GM seeds and the chemicals is the same company, and they also produce the medicine. You get cancer, they get more profit, so for them, every door is a win, while the people in the environment only receive losses. And then one day, the farmers' debt becomes so large they cannot pay. They have to mortgage their last piece of land and end up empty-handed. Many farmers choose to end their lives on the land that was just taken away by drinking pesticides. That could be the tragic life of anyone among the more than 250,000 farmers recorded in India in just 16 years. From cotton fields to cramped garment workshops, the entire production chain in the fast fashion industry is operated by squeezing prices down to the lowest possible level. The price that consumers do not have to pay is pushed back to the people who actually make the products, those who deserve to be recognized and guaranteed a decent life. They work in dangerous environments, with pittance wages, destroyed health, and even trade their lives. Yet most consumers do not know or do not want to know that. This system will continue to operate. As long as consumer demand remains, there will naturally be supply. It is worth noting that this demand comes not only from necessity, but also from a deliberately nurtured consumption loop. We are constantly led to buy more and more. Fast fashion, despite its many consequences in production, is still the preferred choice for the majority. Because with its extremely cheap price, It makes consumers feel like they are benefiting. However, in reality, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Consumers think they are saving, but are unintentionally trapped in a shopping spiral with no escape. According to experts interviewed in The True Cost, material values are increasingly emphasized, leading to psychological problems in consumer life. When people put weight on money, self-image, social status, and personal property, they also easily fall into a state of anxiety, boredom, and dissatisfaction. Those psychological symptoms are formed through the constant reception of messages from advertisements that we all see every day. Essentially, ads will try to convey that consuming their products will satisfy your needs. Car ads give people a sense of success. Shampoo ads make us believe that beautiful hair will help us be loved. Regardless of the product, the core message remains the same. The way to solve every problem in life is just to buy, and buy. The development of social media makes consumer culture spread more widely than ever. Haul videos, unboxings, and KOLs and influencers with glamorous appearances have painted a rosy dream for followers. And so, instead of buying 1 or 2 new outfits a year as before, people can now buy 1 or 2 new sets for every holiday, party, or just when they receive their salary. Gradually, mid-range spending disappears. People only have 2 types of spending: one for extremely expensive things like houses, cars, insurance, and tuition, and 2 for extremely cheap items like a cup of milk tea, a lipstick, or a new shirt. Expensive expenses take a lot of time and effort to achieve, while extremely cheap ones are very easy to pay for. So many people tend to buy a lot of cheap items, but when added up, that amount is not small at all. Ernest Elmo Calkins, a pioneer in the modern advertising industry, once wrote in an article that consumerism, after all, is about making people use durable items as if they were disposable. Andrew researched the statistics and pointed out that every year people buy 80 billion new pieces of clothing, a 400% increase compared to 2 decades ago. Consumers may think they are taking advantage of bargains, but in reality, they are also part of a manipulated consumption machine, where demand is created for corporate profit. And what is more significant is that the price of this excess is not limited to money, psychology, or lifestyle. It is being paid by the very survival of the planet. With a huge amount of products produced, no matter how much a person buys, there is always surplus. In addition, poor product quality and fast-moving trends, along with extremely cheap prices, make users ready to discard old clothes without hesitation. As a result, Mother Nature has to bear a giant mountain of trash from her fashionable children. Each year, Americans throw away 11 million tons of textile waste, and most of these materials are non-biodegradable. This means tons of waste will sit in landfills for 200 years or even longer, while they continuously emit harmful gases. Many people think about donating old clothes, but in reality, only 10% of charitable clothes are sold in thrift stores. Most of the rest flows into developing countries. When tracing old clothing bales shipped to Haiti, a country in the Caribbean, Andrew discovered a disease called Pepe. Pepe is the term for secondhand clothes from developed countries that are collected, sorted, baled, and exported in large quantities. It's called a disease because since Pepe appeared in Haiti and increased exponentially, the decline of the local textile industry began. As a result, Haitians began to outsource cheap shirts to export back to the US. In another corner of the world, Kanpur, a city along the Ganges River in India, tanneries are killing the sacred river of more than 800 million Hindus. Every day, more than 50 million liters of wastewater are discharged from the leather workshops. Toxic chemicals used to soften leather flow into the water source for farming and daily life. As a result, most people in the region suffer from skin diseases like jaundice, rashes, pustules, and diseases of the digestive system, liver, and cancer. High-end fashion brands receive cheap raw materials, while the people of Kanpur receive a heavily polluted living environment and diseases. Sadly, despite the heavy consequences on the environment and human life, those expensive prices are not calculated in the production cost of an outfit. The natural economy, resources extracted from nature like land, water, air, are not counted because people think they are infinite. Then the labor economy, where workers and farmers are also considered invisible. The only thing that is counted is the GDP of a country. And then, alongside the environmental impacts, social life also suffers countless influences that we won't notice if we don't pay attention. In Bangladesh, there are millions of women like Shima who have to work long hours at factories, having no time to care for and raise their children. They have to send their children to relatives and grandparents in the countryside. They work tirelessly in the hope that their children will have a better future, instead of continuing to work in factories like their parents. Those non-stop efforts are met with catastrophic labor accidents. Shima said, "I believe that these clothes are made from our blood." She doesn't want to see people buy, wear, and then discard clothes that are traded for the blood and bones of workers in factories that could collapse at any time. The biggest wish of workers is to be treated with kindness, paid a worthy wage, and work in a safe environment. And when basic rights are not met, disputes break out. In the capital Phnom Penh, Cambodia, many garment workers took to the streets demanding a minimum wage increase to $160 a month. Things turned chaotic when police were deployed, and they began firing to suppress them. For about $160 in a month of work, 5 people died from bullets. 23 were arrested, and more than 40 were injured. Andrew Morgan points out a harsh reality that to keep foreign brands, the Cambodian government, like many other developing countries, must keep the basic wage of workers extremely low, because if they don't, they will face the risk of investment withdrawal. But because of that, the big brands actually reaping huge profits from the garment industry are not held responsible, because they don't directly hire the workers, nor directly operate the factories. They are completely exempt from responsibility for the poor working environment, accidents, or exploitative labor practices, a system that is like a nightmare for the workers trapped inside. All of these things are the true cost that the fast fashion industry is trying to hide behind beautiful, cheap clothes. From giant mountains of trash, polluted rivers, to the blood, sweat, and lives of people on the other side of the supply chain, all are an inseparable part of the shirt we put on every day. However, while they pay with their own lives, the final beneficiaries, big fashion brands and consumers, are not required to bear any responsibility, and that is the biggest tragedy. Because when responsibility is denied and demand increases, the production wheel will not stop. Going through all the hidden downsides, Andrew Morgan asks, is there an escape from this horrific loop? Economist Richard Wolff answered in The True Cost that the real problem lies in the system itself. He argued that the US is a very special country. You can criticize everything to change it for the better, education, transport, but you absolutely cannot criticize the economic system. And when something is not renewed for a long time, it rots. However, between the harsh cycles, there are still people striving for a different path. The True Cost introduces projects like People Tree, a sustainable fashion brand that cooperates directly with traditional villages, respecting labor conditions and the environment. Or Larea Pepper, the farmer in Texas who chose organic farming because she believes a healthy fashion industry needs to start from the cleanest cotton seeds. The change in consumer choice of each individual can be very small, but it creates impacts on a whole system. One day, when the impact is large enough, the industry will be forced to react. Fashion has long been more than just about clothes. Behind every item is a whole chain with consequences for the environment, health, and human rights. The True Cost by Andrew Morgan provides a comprehensive picture of a complex problem, a system with closely linked downsides. From authentic footage, each slice of the issue gives the audience the opportunity to look back at their own role, to see where we are in that overall picture and whether we can change anything. Ultimately, fashion should never be built from blood, tears, and trash. Let fashion return to its core, creativity, and the love for beauty.